Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you very much for inviting me. And I must say it's a special pleasure for me to come here today. My train ride was 15 hours yesterday, so I also took a major effort to come here because I really love the Marie Curie projects. I mean, you see me here today, more or less old, while I also have been involved in such a project, and we train the future generations. And I'm so happy to bring my perspective, which is of course out of date and so on, or to this future generation to say, no, we don't believe, no, this is something we need to test again, and so on and so on. And I'm also happy that this is not, let's say, the usual faculty of biology or the faculty of fisheries, and you are really aiming to make a difference here. And so I bring you a little bit of my perspective. I try to find out what you want to hear, what was not so easy for me to grasp. So I am here now at the Berlin Museum of Natural History, but I have my hat that I wear today is also the one of the IUCN Freshwater Fish Specialist Group, which is a part of the IUCN Special Survival Commission, and one of the major products of this IUCN Species Survival Commission is the so-called IUCN Red List, of which you might have heard already. You might also all be aware that recently there was the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Summit from the Convention on Biological Diversity. We have since few years the European Green Deal. Every country has a national biodiversity strategy. Also your countries, as long as you belong to European community, have this. We in Germany actually renew this following the, let's say, goals which are given by the Green Deal and also by the CBD or targets. And really, these targets are great. If we would achieve these targets, we would really make a big breakthrough. So for example, by 2030, the loss of biodiversity is to be halted and the trend is reversed. At least 30% of the global area, especially in areas of particular importance for biodiversity, as Italy, for example, are effectively protected and managed. And at least 30% of degraded ecosystems are restored. And I mean, RIBES project is a project about ecosystem restoration. The biodiversity strategy, it holds also important things for freshwaters. So the so-called freshwater key targets, 30% of land and sea protected, 1/3 of which is strictly protected. Then the EU nature restoration law, we still do not really understand what will be in the box. So this is something we are already very curious about. And of course, we already have things like the Water Framework Directive, which is taking up speed in the last few years. Or we have the restoration and preservation of ecological flows by 2027. And of course, we have this target, 25,000 free-flowing kilometers of free-flowing rivers by 2030. I mean, dear ladies and gentlemen, this is in 7 years. Let's go. So we have a certain, let's say, timeline of these ambitious goals for coming from the European Commission, and as a member of a European state, I'm very happy that we have these European infrastructures. So we have the Habitat and directive since '92. We have the Water Framework Directive since 2000. We have the eel regulations. You know, eel, one of the most common, most important freshwater fishes in Europe at all, since 2007. And we have a pan-European plan for sturgeon, surprise, surprise, since 2018. And now we have also the very cool biodiversity strategy for 2030. But in a way, this is just words on paper. So how do we measure success? For this, we need indicators, and already here we fall often short. One indicator to understand have we reached the goals is the so-called IUCN Red List. The IUCN Red List is the world's most comprehensive information source for extinction risk of species at the global level. So there is an extinction risk category, you know this, critically endangered, endangered, vulnerable, and so on, assigned to each of the species. This is based on the best available information and is produced by the world's leading species experts and conservation scientists. And it's, of course, also a kind of open access journal. What is important to understand with the IUCN Red List is that it targets the extinction risk. So, for example, species, and it goes only for a quite short period, so this is 10 years or 3 generations. And if a species, let's say like marble trout, has declined in the past massively, but is then stable or increasing in the last 10 years or 3 generations, there is no extinction risk anymore, and such a species is surprisingly or least concerned. So the species which are assessed following the IUCN Red List as critically endangered, endangered or vulnerable are really species which face a real extinction risk. So it's not just some rare species. The big challenge with the IUCN Red List is that it should be updated all 10 years. So we need all 10 years, we need to have new data for these 10 years or 3 generations. And the last one was published in 2007. And you might have seen it from our publication in 2011 or from our handbook. And we started in 2018 to develop, to update the IUCN Red List for European freshwater fishes. So we need, of course, to update the background data for the assessments. And first we had a project by Euronatur, you know, the guys who work with the dams in the Balkans, which helped us a lot. And then we also had a Marie Curie fellow who was busy to update the data for the new IUCN Freshwater Fish Red List. So first we compiled the data for the distribution maps of all the species. What is, you can imagine, quite challenging. Basically, we base our data on quality controlled GBIF data. You know, GBIF is the Global Biodiversity Infrastructure Facility, as far as I remember. And we had another project, BioFresh, where we compiled for GBIF a lot of distribution data, also available then from here. And you see here the map of bream. And of course, you can imagine that the bream in the Volga is one of the most common fishes, while Russian scientists do not contribute due to political reasons to GBIF, also one of the challenges here. But all of this, the quality control of this data, you can imagine, was a pain in the ass. It was really a challenge. And we will hopefully soon make this 4 million data, quality control data, publicly available so that you also can work on this. We compiled maps for 695 European species, including alien species and undescribed species. So you might remember 10 years ago, we had 150 species less in Europe. And doing this exercise also demonstrates you how important are your data. And you are, of course, also free to publish your data and give your data to GBIF. And there is now, with all the citizen science platforms, iNaturalist or whatever, many more possibilities for everybody to make your data available. And I really can recommend this because your data are needed and they will be used in the future. So this is what we did to assess the distribution area of the species. And you see the bream is very widespread, while this Cobitis in Spain has a very limited distribution, and by this, of course, face a much higher risk of extinction. We would have been happy to compile the abundance data which are available in the member states from the European Water Framework Directive. You know, all the countries do these water framework exercises, and these are real standardized qualitative data. While the data remain somehow locally, only the results go up, and to mobilize this local data is a big challenge. We did this for Germany, for the new red list, which is now online, and you can find it easy on my Google Scholar or ResearchGate account. For this, we compiled all this data from 5,497 sites, population trend data for all the species. And you see, we have, of course, like beetling, which is strongly increasing. We have species which are more or less stable, and we have species which decline. No time to go into details, but there is surprising results, for example, like the eyed Leuciscus idus, at the end not so surprising, which is one of the most strongly declining freshwater fishes in Germany. None of the experts we interviewed 50 experts, was aware that this is happening. So this is what we did for Germany, and I'm sure some other, especially Scandinavian countries, also have this data available. Maybe you have them also. Then we had these workshops in 2019 on the Mediterranean species in Rome. We interviewed many national and special species experts. Then came Corona. Then our Marie Curie candidate fell into depression and gave up. But nevertheless, we hope that we can publish in 2024 that the new red list will be available for you. So let's look a bit at the results. So let's look first at extinct species. While everybody is talking all the time about extinction crisis, we have surprisingly few real globally extinct species which lived in Europe. The most well-known is the European penguin, the great auk. Then there was one even Italian species endemic to Sardinia, Prolagos sardus, a kind of island rabbit, which went extinct in 1800, and the black oyster catcher from the Canary Islands went extinct in 1940. I mean, there's not so many. While if we compare this with extinct freshwater fishes, there's many more. So we actually recognize 20 species as extinct. But from these, none of them went extinct in the last 20 years. And if you look a bit closer into these lists, it's a lot of Coregonus species and things like this, a lot of, let's say, post-glacially evolved species and other interesting cases. We also have Lazarus species. This is, of course, the most nice thing at all. This is species which were believed to be extinct, but had then been rediscovered. This is first here Romanogobio antipai, a gudgeon from the lower Danube, which was recently rediscovered. Or the char from Lake Constance, Salvelinus profundus, which was not seen for 50 years and suddenly more or less reappeared in the lake. And this lamprey, which was also not seen for many, many decades and then found again in the Sea of Azov in Ukraine. Now difficult to search for it. So basically, we did something again. So we did the red list again. So we can compare the results, of course, with the former red list, which you see the results here on this graph, and here the new one on this graph. And you would say, oh, this looks very similar. And indeed it is. So we have more species, of course, assessed, but at the end, not much difference. And I have to say, I was also very surprised. And here you see the red list categories, the number of species in each category from 2007, from 2023, all the species assessed. And of course, we should not compare cherries with apples. Huh? So this is the graph were only the species which had been reassessed. So they had been already assessed in 2007 and then had been assessed again in 2023. And you see we have less critically endangered species, we have more extinct species, we have less critically endangered species, we have more endangered species, less vulnerable species, or a bit more near threatened species, and a bit more least concerned and a bit less data deficient species. Basically, often we just know more about the species and this leads to the change in the threat category. So not much genuine change in the whole game. And I must say, I love this. This is really good. So there is no extinction catastrophe happening in the last 10 years. Species have been more or less stable, or it's in the detail, it's not so very easy, and I give you a few examples later. But at the end, we have, of course, lost 20 species. But what is this? This is, let's go back to this. This is the number of extinct species is now 2%. So 98% of the species have survived. This is great news, especially as we want to be nature positive. So this is our aim. And my message to you is all of them are still there. They are maybe not still there in all the places they always had been, but basically all of them survived. And they are waiting for your restoration activities to help them to expand their ranges and to be in a better shape. And this is very nice. Let's bring you a bit down again. Let's look a bit on the threats. Of course, the major threat, and I gave a similar presentation more than 10 years ago, and this was not the first threat I listed then. The major threat, of course, today is climate change. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the old world is over. We see the onset of a new world. We have to accept this, and there is no way out. What we see drying out of the Po River, massive droughts all over Europe, massive floods, and so on, this is just the beginning. In 10, 20 years, we will be happy if it would be like this or last year. The old times are over, and they will not come back. The political answer to this is, of course, very interesting, because the political answer to this is nationalism and fascism. So also in Germany, where we suffer from this, the answer is an increase in people who vote for right-wing parties who say we should stop to act against climate change at all because it's fake. I have no comment anymore on this. So water abstraction was already, especially in the Mediterranean, a major threat. This has gone much worse. We are not leaving enough waters in the streams for fishes at many places. And For example, I was in the area of Udine recently. They told me that this summer they have water again, but due to so many obstacles in the river continuum, the fishes can just not come back. So they survived in some places, but they were not able to recolonize the area because there's so many dams, so many weirs, and so many problems. And we have a warming up of rivers and lakes. And for many of the, let's say, southern species, maybe not such a major problem. In Germany, we already see a clear decline of old cold stenothermic species. This is the major group of species which declines in our country. Still, many of the lakes seems to be quite resilient. They have a deep cold water area. And the global decline of salmon and trouts might be strongly underestimated because this is now happening very fast. And also for us, it was very difficult to track. But it's not just salmon, trouts, graylings, whitefish. It's also things like this. This is dace. Also in the Leucystid family, there is several cold stenothermic species, and maybe the eyed also belongs to this, and lampreys, for example. Opening of rivers could help here. Yeah, species can find more easily refuges, but of course it's just one, let's say, climate change mitigation measure. Then we have the collapse of the eel population. Already this is now 15 years or on the headers of many people. And the eel trade, dear ladies and gentlemen, I would have never expected this, became one of the major global wildlife crimes. So we have no lions, rhinos, elephant tusks or things. We have eels, and it's the same. So 2 to 3 billion euro every year is this eel trade worthwhile. And it's smuggling of eels from European Commission to China, and it's a real unbelievable story what is going on. And obviously, we have no means to stop it. Then the sturgeons. Basically, in a way, the sturgeons are a conservation success story because they are not extinct. They survived somehow in a feral state. So all the sturgeons are managed. There is in Europe, except for sterlet, no real wild self-sustaining population left in sturgeons. Also not in the Caspian Sea or whatever. So if we would stop stocking sturgeons, the sturgeons would just disappear. And there is things like this. Franz Hölker knows from IGB, knows this very well. The Atlantic sturgeon, Acipensa sturio. And I recently asked if it's still true. The last reproduction in the wild was in 1994. This is still not considered as extinct in the wild. Why ever? Yeah, what else can I say? And I would not be surprised if the situation with Atlantic salmon is a little bit similar. How many natural, self-sustaining populations of Atlantic salmon survive? How many are really independent from artificial reproduction? Have we already domesticated large parts of Atlantic salmon, and if we would stop doing all of this, they would just disappear? This is one of the most important fish for the restoration, for fish passages, and so on and so on. But now we are under the frame of climate change. It's even more serious, so it is really something to fight for. This Atlantic salmon is again assessed as vulnerable, or in my opinion, quite an optimistic view. And then we have the alien species disaster. And here in northern Italy, you know what I'm talking about. So altogether, we have 234 plus species native to Europe or alien to Europe that have been introduced outside of their range. In 2010, we assessed this already, and it was only 106. Now it's more than the double. We have 122 European translocated species that have been established outside of their native range. In 2010, it was 77. We have 45 non-European real alien species that have established in Europe, 26 in 2007. So 19 have been added. I mean, have been so many European projects on alien invasive species. Did this bring something at all? Yes, of course. I mean, we all love this, huh? Alien species. As biologists, we can make a new paper on the first record of this. But the fate of this is always the same, dear ladies and gentlemen, like this very beautiful, nice first European record of this shitty, ubiquitous Chinese catfish. We make a paper, we publish this, it's found in a harbor in German Danube. Of course, we do not do any action, because it was not demonstrated that this fish is harmful. When it is then everywhere, and it's already spreading, of course, then we discover it's harmful, but then we discover also it's too late, we cannot do anything anymore, because it's anyhow already everywhere. Yeah, this is alien species in Europe, and the worst element in the new IUCN Red List, you know, this is many hundred species, and you don't see if few things change. The major declines we noticed is native Italian species. It's really a disaster. Rutilus aula, I mean, can you imagine? Rutilus aula, once one of the most common, abundant freshwater fishes in northern Italy, basically everywhere. Alburnus arborella in central Italy, Barbus tuberinus, and so on and so on. The Rutilus aula went to endangered due to the strong declines due to the invasion of common roach in northern Italy. And even one of the most rare and unknown species in Europe at all, Romanogobio benacensis, the Italian gudgeon, replaced by Central European gudgeon. Nobody cared, nobody was interested. We know almost nothing about this species. And if it would have gone extinct, what did not happen, happily, yet, we would not even have noticed it. Alien species also are a major challenge for all of those who work with hydropower, who work with dams, and so on and so on. They are stocked, especially in reservoirs, because anglers need to have some fun in the evening, and they find it unfair if there is no Silurus glanis in their reservoir because of biogeographic reasons. And of course, we can blame this, yeah, but this is lamenting. We need more to collaborate with anglers and understand why we cannot control this process. Rivers and reservoirs, I was asked not to talk about dams and things like this here. Basically, if we all know if we transfer a river to a reservoir, this is a kind like cutting a rainforest. If you have cut the rainforest, there's not a hole into a nirvana. There is another ecosystem. And there is biodiversity also in these meadows with the bulls and so. So this is very similar if you transfer a river to a reservoir. It is a completely different, novel ecosystem. Lots of activities is going on. Priority given is, for example, to dam removals in many live projects and so on and so on. I bring you here one, Div Aqua from Spain. We recently had the European Congress on Ichthyology in collaboration with LIFE. Many interesting projects had been presented there. And the clear statement from the Commission here was, we give priority to dam removal over making them possible. Of course, if this is not possible, then we should install fish ladders. But seriously, and this is, for example, something we do not do in Germany. We just make fish ladders. We don't care if this can be removed or not. And we have many opportunities here in Europe. We have in Europe 1 million barriers. This means in the average, every second kilometers, there is a barrier. 85% of these are small barriers, and many are obsolete. So there is many opportunities for restoration. On the other hand, this is a study by Euronatur, which only goes for hydropowers, and we know that it's 21,387 existing hydropower plants, 8,785 to be added, mostly in the Alps or the Balkans. I'm not sure if they will be really added. There is a strong and growing opposition on this. Many are in pristine rivers, and the destruction of these rivers would be the results. And what I find the worst element is that 1 out of 4 of these plants, hydropowers, 2,500, are planted in protected areas like national parks and Natura 2000 sites. And open your eyes when you go to a national park, how many dams and reservoirs and so are in the national parks. We are not aware of this at all. Huh? To pick flowers is a problem in the national park, but to destroy the river, that's fine. The European Commission is aware of this, and you can find, for example, this website, or when you record it, then you can see the small link down. And we really want to go for something on this. The Water Framework Directive is taking up speed. Nature restoration law will come. The 25,000 free-flowing rivers will come. So there is a lot to do, and the European Commission is already sorting out how to finance this. Still, we are in this situation. Yeah, it was all fine for all the decades. Why we should do something? I stand, of course, with the biodiversity voice. No, the time is now. And the LIFE project, for example, this is a graph on activities in LIFE projects connected to fish. And you see the removal of dams and barriers is the most important activity here. There is big players, Natura 2000, LIFE, Euronatur, the World Fish Migration Foundation, they do a fantastic job. Also with the European Fish Migration Day, and they brought up this dam removal. Europe and the European Rivers Network, also the civil society, I would say, is growing in this field, and there is a lot of action. Overall, I find, if I compare this to 10, 15 years ago, there is a strongly increasing numbers of success stories. The Vjosa, I mean, in a country like Albania, they stopped all the dams on the Vjosa and made a national park. I would never have believed that this could be possible. Or, you know, maybe not. This fish is not a sculpin. This is Romanichthys valsanicola, one of the most rare fishes in the world. Endemic to a small stream in Romania. There was once a LIFE project, all money disappeared, nothing happened, and we've always feared that this species just disappears. Now there is a guy who is very enthusiastic, who is from the villages in the area, and this is now a real success story. And I guess there is many more, and I cannot present them, of course, to you here. I have no time. So the conservation of status has not much changed in the last 15 years. Alien species and climate change are strongly increasing threats, and we have to act against this, and especially with alien species, we should be able to do something. We should work and have to work more with those who are bringing these alien species to us, and this is mostly anglers. Biodiversity is waiting for restoration. It is waiting for your activities. There is a strong increase in fish conservation projects all over Europe. Dam removal is a strong activity, and climate change mitigation is a major restoration and development challenge now and in the future. And by this, thank you very much for your attention. And I'm open for questions. If I have some time left, I'm not so sure.